Hi friends, it's Lauren Taylor. Thanks for joining me in my craft room today. It's the last day of the month, so it's time for some Halloween inspiration. I'm going to be using this giant amazing stamp set called That's a Rock Fact from Popsiclesticks. I'm also featuring the Halloween Town die set from the Sassy Club. I did bring in some other dies from my stash, like the Stitch Tree border lawn cuts from Fawn and the grass scene craft die from Kindred stamps to do all of my die cutting. I did die cutting with Noble Fur and Paper Bag from Fawn, which is my green and brown. I brought in Fog from Spellbinders and a basic beige from Stampin' Up. So I'm starting with adding some sky or like dark dimension to my Fog cardstock that I trimmed down to A2 in size. So that's 4¼ by 5½ inches. And I'm starting with Lost Shadow Distress Oxide, which does about nothing on Fog cardstock, but I'm mostly using it as a blending for black soot. So I wanted to create a little bit darker of a gray at the top of my paper and then use the black soot to also add a darker border. But that Lost Shadow is just going to help me blend from the black soot into the cardstock color. Once I was fine with the results, I'm going to move on to coloring in my grass. So for this, I'm using Rustic Wilderness, which again doesn't really do very much on the Noble Fur cardstock. It does add a little bit of shadow, but like I said, I'm mostly doing this to darken things up. So I'm going to bring in that black soot to blend into the Rustic Wilderness, and that really does give the depth that I'm going for. I repeat this process for my 3 little trees that will be off in the background. For the cardstock, that will be what's supposed to be the fields and trees. I'm using, again, paper bag cardstock, and I'm using gathered twigs and ground espresso as the 2 distress oxide colors this time. I did not bring in black soot. I thought I would just go with a darker brown than a black because the black is a bit on the cooler side, so wanted to just use darker brown. So I'm adding this to the brown cardstock again that's supposed to be from this particular scene in this show, the fields and trees in the background, and then using it to also darken up the frame that I created, again using the Halloween Town die set from the Sassy Club. Once I'm all done with my ink blending, I'm using my Twiddler's Nook brushes to do my ink blending. I'm going to layer my scene together, so just the cardstock die cut pieces that I made, with the exception of the frame. I'm going to add the frame later. I'm using liquid glue to glue all of those pieces together. So while I'm gluing, I wanted to talk a little bit more about Twiddler's Nook. I created this card not only for Halloween, last day of the month, it's also for an Instagram hop that Twiddler's Nook Amanda is putting together over on Instagram, or she has been putting together over on Instagram. She has done a hop every 31st from January to today, October, Halloween. And so make sure you head over to Instagram to hop along with us. There's a chance to win a gift card to her shop. So definitely will be really fun to see how everyone uses Twiddler's Nook products to create a Halloween card and just get some inspiration. I know today technically is Halloween, but Halloween all year round is how I like to live my life. So hopefully you do too. So I am going to not only use the brushes, you can see her tools that I use in the upper right hand corner. I have my magnetic tray. I have my little skull plate. I forget what it's called. A skull tray. That's probably a better word, tray. And then my magnetic tray too. I use these all the time, especially the skull. I'm sure you've seen it before. And then I'm going to bring in those embellishments you see in the corner to add some details to my card when I'm done. So I'm moving on to stamping and coloring. I took the large pumpkin image from the It's a Rock Fact stamp set and all of the leaves. And I'm going to stamp it a few times in Crunchy Leaf dye ink from Fawn. This is an alcohol marker friendly ink, and it's not as dark brown as I would like it to be, so I'm not going to take out my stamps from my Misty. I'm just going to set them aside while I do my coloring, and like you've seen me do before, I will stamp them again in a darker VersaFine Clair ink, and the reason why I stamp after is because it is not alcohol marker friendly. So I'm using just the brown to give me, you know, the imprint of my stamp, and I'm going to use Olo markers to color in my images. I will have my caps at the top of the screen. So if you have any questions about what I'm using, just let me know. I am going to kind of quickly go through my coloring because it's not super detailed. I use 2 shades for everything. So I'm using YG's 8.5 to be the base of my darker stripes, and then 8.3 to be the base of my lighter stripes. I wanted to add a little bit more dimension, so I brought in 8.7 to darken up the dark stripes, and then I'm going to bring in that 8.5 again, but this time it's going to be the shadow for my lighter stripes. So just trying to give this creepy pumpkin man a little bit more dimension. For the eyes and kind of around the teeth of this pumpkin man, I'm using OR 1.1. It's a really pale, peachy, kind of orange color. And then for the color combinations for my pumpkin, kind of like every other stripe, kind of like a beach ball, he's different color oranges, a little bit darker, a little bit lighter. And then I'm going to use those same little bit darker, a little bit lighter orange colors for the 2 pumpkins on the sides that are at the bottom. So I'm using O 2.7 as the darker and O 2.5 as the lighter for the darker shades of orange, again for my pumpkin face here, and then the bottom left pumpkin is the same color combination. For the lighter part of my pumpkin, I'm going to use that O 2.5 again. This time it's the shadow. And then that will also be the shadow I use for the pumpkin all the way on the right. And then I use O 2.4 to be the lighter one. So coloring it in, doing my best to get a nice blend between the 2 shades. For the mouths of my pumpkins on the bottom, the left and right, I used R 1.7 to color those in. And then for his hat on the left, I'm using O 7.8 and O 7.7. Just wanted like a really dark, kind of grayishy brown color to color in that hat. Now, when I get to the hat of this one, you're going to see my boo-boo. I left it in, but I'm using RG7 and RG6 to be the belt buckle of the hat, and my RG6 just like leaked on me. And you could see my little panic there of what to do because I went into the orange pumpkin, but I was still able to, before it dried, get in there with the 2.5 and the 2.2, I believe, or 2.4. And I just kept blending over that, and it just actually creates a nice shadow under the hat, so it worked out fine. And I use RG5 to color in the rest of the hat. And I know it looks really wonky right now, but when I stamp over it, you'll see I recovered quite well. For the stem of my pumpkin, I used OR 3.4, and then I'm using a lighter combination for this final pumpkin, so I left that in. I'm using O 2.4 as the shadow and O 2.2 as the lighter color. So you can see I do try to blend between those 2 fairly well, but just wanted to add one more light pumpkin to the mix. I colored in the leaves with the dark green combination, just like my striped pumpkin man. So I'm placing my images back into my MISTI. I'm going to do a practice stamp. It looks good. It looks like it's right in place. This is always the scariest part. And I brought in Pinecone VersaFine Clair, and I'm going to apply lots of ink so I get a nice clean stamp just one time. So I love about Clairs. And you'll see here that it stamps so nice. It really darkens those lines. It gives that look of a like a black outline, but this time it's dark brown, and you can see the hat of my pumpkin on the right recovered nicely. I wanted to add a little bit of stippling, so I'm going to add some dots with the darkest colors throughout all my images, and of course I grabbed my white gel pen to add some highlights as well. I'm going to fussy cut out all of my leaves as well as that pumpkin image, and my happy hands are ready to move on to the sentiment. I'm going to grab You'll Join Us Someday, which is a sentiment from the show. I guess I should talk about that. For those of you who are like, what the heck is that pumpkin thing? You are missing out. You need to go check out. This is an old cartoon. Um, I don't usually I try to avoid saying fandom things, the actual names when it's a tribute stamp, just because I don't like my friends to get in trouble. But I'm going to say it really quickly. It's Over the Garden Wall, and you can find it on Hulu. It's 10 years old, used to be on Cartoon Network, and it is the weirdest little cartoon I've ever seen. Well, maybe not ever seen, but definitely top five. But it's so quirky and it has great character voices, really great lines like "You'll join us someday." Another line that my daughter and I always say is, "Ain't that just the way?" And we also say, "That's a rock fact." So you should definitely check out this fun cartoon if you don't know what it is already. If you do know what it is, or let's say you watch it and you become instantly obsessed, like my daughter and I, there are still some stamp sets left on Popsiclesticks Etsy shop. So while you're shopping Twiddler's Nook on her Etsy shop, head over to Popsiclesticks as well. So while I was jibber jabbering, I added my frame to my card front with 1mm foam adhesive, and then I'm adding my images or that large image in my sentiment with a 2mm foam, just so there's a little bit of difference in their dimension. Where my pumpkin image overlapped with the frame a bit, I did add 1mm foam, so it wasn't like too terribly thick. Now I'm going to use a jewel picker to add those leaves throughout the card, and I'm going to grab the lighter clay image jack-o'-lanterns from the Happy Jacks clay embellishments, again from Twiddler's Nook. They were gifted to me to be a part of the Spooktacular, and they match perfectly with these pumpkins on my card. So here's a close-up look at the "You'll Join Us Someday," very creepy, but very demure, or whatever you want to say, card that I use as the last Twiddler's Nook Spooktacular project. It's Halloween. It's also the last day of the month. So I hope you have some fun today with me with this card. And don't forget to head over to Instagram after you're done watching. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll click like, and if you're new here, I hope you'll subscribe and come back. As always, you can find everything I use down below in the description box. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Bye!